So please welcome to the stage Mike Lowe and Tom Caron. Good luck, Mike.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Oh, careful, Tom, careful.
We did the check before I had to turn it on for you. We might have to do this. No. Can you hear me now?
How we doing? Good?
You're good, sure. Can you hear me now?
All right. So whenever Tom and I have known each other for a long time, and whenever we get together at Fenway Park, the first thing we do is take a selfie. So we need to do this.
All right, everybody make noise behind us, please. All right, there we go. Thank you. All right. You'll see that on Twitter later.
Yes, you will.
Or something. Thanks for coming, everybody. Really nothing to do on a Tuesday night?
Tom and I have known each other for a very long time.
Yes.
We shared some memorable bus trips with the Portland Pirates.
Yes, he sat next to me until I got roped into the poker game out back.
And you lost everything.
I did.
Most of the time.
But the players loved me, and I got great interviews.
You did. You did.
Barry Trotz, who was the coach, now the coach of the Islanders, said, "I never seen a broadcaster get in so tight with the players, and it's because you're the worst card player I've ever met." It's a true story.
We have a lot of stories that we can't share with you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we couldn't think of one that we could.
No, we couldn't.
It's amazing.
You know, everything involved profanity or something else. So
Kevin Kaminsky.
Kevin Kaminsky.
Is, you know.
He was at the heart of everything.
Killer.
The killer. Killer. Well, Tom, of course, was raised in Lewiston, played soccer at Lewiston High. He,
They're a lot better now than they were then. Trust me.
but you still hold the record.
I do.
He
I hold a record.
He holds a record.
Yeah, the lowest goals against average in a season. I do.
Yes,
I do.
he did.
That's
He
true.
does.
I was a goalie, by the way. That
He
helps.
was a goalie.
I have a goals against average. But that's true.
And
30 years later.
30 years later.
That's right.
As great as they are, his name is still in the record book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that says a lot.
All right. Yeah, well, thank you. Mike McGraw, who's the coach still, was my coach then, and has done an amazing job. I hope you all know the story. And Amy Bass did a great job with one goal. The book about how the high school soccer team in Lewiston has really brought that community together. And it's amazing because he will, every year, you still got the record. He said it was years, still got the record. So someone will beat it. There was a kid who had it, he won one game away. Yeah. There was about 6-7 years ago. If he had a shutout in the last game, he'd have broken it, but he gave up a goal.
That was all over Twitter.
I was standing behind him, giving him the hex.
So Tom still has family living in Maine, and Maine is still important to you, isn't it? You've got a summer home here on was it Moose Pond?
Moose Pond.
And,
yeah, up in Bridgeton.
And your son Robbie
goes to Bridgeton Academy.
Goes to Bridgeton Academy, played soccer there, and he's going to go to Hobart and play soccer there.
He is. Yes, not a goalie.
But
Maine has scored a lot of goals off me.
Maine is important to you, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's you know, I grew up here. I'm from Lewiston. My wife is from Lewiston. Both our families are primarily still here in Maine. And, you know, when I got the job at Nesson, I'll always remember that. I thought of it then, and I still try to think of it now as Nesson, you know, up here. When you're in Boston, it gets a little convoluted because, you know, you get to see the interviews and the coverage on all the stations. You don't get as much of it up here, and Nesson is your ticket to New England sports. And up here, they pay me to say that.
You get $10 for that, right?
Yeah, it's more than 10. But I remember, you know, I remember first of all calling my dad in 1995 when I got the job, and he was like, "Geez, that's $15 a month, Nesson. You really?" See if I can get you a deal, which I couldn't, by the way. They don't give discounts. But we became basic cable later, so he could see me more, which was good. But I do remember that, you know, listen, I think there are in many ways more passionate fans in Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont than there are sometimes in Boston because, you know, I always think of spring training, and it's a long, cold winter in Maine or Burlington, Vermont, where I went to college. And, you know, you get those first palm trees down in Fort Myers. You get those just guys throw and catch, and you're like, oh, you know, we almost made it. We're almost there. So to answer your question, yeah, I always try to remember where I'm from. I always try to remember that we're talking to all of New England, not just people inside 128.
Well, it seems that the people in Boston, too, are kind of overwhelmed by sports, talk radio especially. And maybe up here, it's not so much, negative. Let's put it that way.
Maybe not as negative. I would agree with that. And it's also, I hope we all appreciate the fact that this is the golden era of Boston sports. I mean, it's absolutely insane. When I started in 95, you were in the middle of 1986, the Celtics, to 2001 Patriots without a single championship. It's 15 years. The Herald, can I mention another paper?
You can mention the Boston.
Is that okay? Where's Lisa? Is that okay? Okay. So they had done a graphic. It was like the sign Hollywood in the hills, right? And it was Loserville, and it was over Boston. And then Brady leads them to the comeback against the Rams, and they win that one. And now we if you go like 18 months without a championship, people go nuts, right? This is ridiculous. We haven't won anything in I remember when the Patriots won their last Super Bowl. It had been like since the Bruins, I think, in 11. People were just getting out of their minds. No, it was been the Red Sox since 13. See, you forget. Now that we win so many, you even forget. I remember that when they lost the first one to the Giants, when the Patriots lost the Super Bowl to the Giants. I have two sons, and the older one, Jack, born in 96, and the younger one, Robbie, 2000. I'm a hockey dad. You talk about your kids in birth years. I have a 96 and a 2000. If you're a hockey parent, you know how that works. But my younger son burst into tears, and my older son was like, ask Dad. They used to pull this crap all the time. It's kind of true.
It's true.
Yeah.
We lived through it. Now, one time, a long time ago, you told me that when you went to college at St. Michael's, you studied journalism because you wanted to be a sports writer.
I did.
You wanted to be Oscar Madison.
It's true. Anybody old enough to remember The Odd Couple? That's literally why I got into journalism. You remember The Odd Couple? And it wasn't really, but he didn't, he ran around in his underwear. He didn't do anything. He didn't shower. His room was a slob. He was a slob. His room was a mess. It's like, I could do that.
Yeah.
Then I got in TV, and you got to shower and shave.
Well, yeah, but you also saw the salary difference, and you said, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. But you got three Maine sports writers. Can we get a round of applause for 3 sports writer of the year? I've got none.
I'm going to look into that.
Yeah, can you, say
I'm
something?
going to investigative reporting.
Yeah,
like
thank
Tom
you.
Caron
Yeah,
has
that should be a series.
It should be. But you told me at the time, and this was back in 2004, that by studying journalism, it gave you the ability to write, and you felt that was important to you as a television sportscaster.
I do, and I tell kids when I meet with students and high school or college students talking about it, I still think we all watch a lot of TV, and I think you can tell the people who can write and the people who can't, and there's more and more people who can't. And I just think, learning the craft of reporting, of writing under deadline, of being able to synthesize a story into words, it still starts with writing, the ability to craft a sentence. Even if you're not writing it out, I think you need to learn how to do that. And I think there's no better way than journalism or some sort of, so many kids want to major in communications and learn television and get into broadcasting that way. But I was telling them, major in journalism, minor in something that gives you a little bit of expertise, whether it's economics or medical field, or learn something, so that if you become a reporter, even on television, you'll be able to report under deadline. And I think that whatever success I've had goes back to being a writer first, a talker second.
Well, if you can't communicate, you have no story to tell.
Right.
So.
Right. And if you watch a show, that happens sometimes. Rain delays are really long.
Rain delays are great. I've sat through some of those.
I got in trouble once because we pay a local TV station. I don't know if we pay them, but we have an agreement with Boston 25, the Fox affiliate down there, and some other stations around New England to do the weather for us. And we had like a 2.5-hour rain delay. So I decided to get up in front of a green screen and do the weather, knowing zero about meteorology. And I'm talking about circulating band. I mean, don't you always want to do that? It's like we got circulating bands of moisture coming in through an Arctic trough. None of it makes sense. I mean, absolutely none of it was correct. And the weather guys actually thought it was funny. They all texted me saying, you make us look better with every word. But our management didn't like it.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah. Plus, I made it sound like it was going to rain for the next 5 days, and they started playing 15 minutes later. So.
Well, I brought up your writing because you do write a column for us, and if it's every Tuesday, and he mostly writes about the Red Sox, but he dips into the Patriots and the Bruins, and gives his perspective, which I think is important for our audience to get the perspective of someone who's in Boston of what's going on in Boston. But as Lisa said, Tom also writes a pretty good Christmas letter, which I have here.
Anybody else? You must get one. Anybody else get one? Yeah.
You actually took some grief about this on air one time, didn't you?
Well, I mean, you'll hear if he's going to read from it, God help us. But if he is actually going to read from this, you'll hear in a minute. It's kind of a parody because we all remember, like 20 years ago, I started doing this 20 years, and I write it 21 years ago. I think this is the 21st.
Yep.
And we were all getting those newsletters about how well everybody was doing it, and I got really sick of hearing that little Buffy was an honor student, and Kim just got made vice president of the bank. And,
had kittens.
Meanwhile, my kids are running around beating the crap out of each other, and my wife gets in a car accident, and we need it, so I wrote the first one to kind of say, well, our life's a mess, and it kind of it resonated with some people. So I kept writing them over the years. And there's a little bit of truth in it, but mostly it's just a bad attempt at comedy. And Don and Jerry, back when Don Orsillo was our play-by-play guy, during a game, it might have been a rain delay, they were talking about letters like that and how pompous people are who do that.
Because those two guys never, ever got off script on a game.
No.
Never.
It was
Never.
It was a rare moment when they strayed from balls and strikes. Nobody was throwing a pizza slice at the moment.
That was the greatest moment.
So they could dip into that. So the producer says to Don, he says, TC does one of those. It doesn't say that I do a parody of it. And so Don, of course, right away, oh my God, I've just heard that Tom Caron does one of these. And Jerry's like, I can't imagine that. Tom's a good guy. He doesn't sound why would he do? And they're crushing me on the air. And I'm texting the producer. How the hell did I told him, what are you. And so it's the only time I've ever done it. That following winter, I wrote the usual one, but I wrote a separate one just for the producer. And it was about how this is the last one. My wife couldn't handle how she was breaking down in tears when they ridiculed us on the air. And, our family was very upset to be part of this. I really just laid it on thick and just sent it to him with the card, not telling him that wasn't the real one, making it seem like 200 people got that letter. And, Brian Zaccello, producer, was the one at fault. And it was great. We never said anything. And it was like the Nesson Christmas party was in January that year, and his wife just keeps looking at us. How you doing? And finally she comes over. She goes, did you really send that to 200 people? And I was like, absolutely. And my wife couldn't, she gave it up. But
So this year.
Really?
Yes.
When's the
Buckle up,
after
folks.
party?
So actually it says for immediate release. So.
Well, it is my annual press release. That's right. So it does say immediate release, so you can, I guess you have rights.
The headline is Karen's empty out the nest for the holidays. Now, Tom's two sons, his oldest is a senior at St. Mike's, following in Tom's footsteps, and his youngest, of course, was at Bridgeton Academy. Dateline Framingham asks, for the first time in the 21-year history of the Caron holiday news release, the family is sending out Yuletide cheer from a quiet, empty house with both Jack and Robbie off to school.
See? It's nice.
It's nice.
It's fine.
According to Psychology Today, which apparently you subscribe to.
Oh, yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Empty nest syndrome is a feeling of loneliness or sadness that occurs in parents after children grow up and leave home. Sobbing mothers have been known to enter their children's bedrooms trying to capture their child's smell. It's very nice.
That's straight out of Psychology Today.
In truth, here's where it is. The Karens have spent the last 22 years trying to get rid of the smells left behind by the boys. For the first time in decades, the house doesn't smell like teen spirit, or sweat, or hockey gear, or skunks.
See, the skunk thing, you had to think about why the house would smell like skunks. Yeah.
And
Massachusetts smells more and more like skunks, I've noticed, in the last 2 years. skunk dispensaries or something. I don't know.
He goes on to say parents deal with empty nests in different ways. Some sell their houses.
Read the whole thing?
No, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Just a couple of excerpts. Some sell their houses and move into smaller abodes. Tom's plan to sell the house before the boys tried to move back was thwarted by Kelly. And then it says, in fact, Tom was found fighting back tears in early September. Everyone was shocked by this unexpected show of emotion.
I'm a sensitive guy.
It was soon discovered that he was fighting empty account syndrome, a feeling of grief that occurs several times a year when tuition payments are due.
Right.
So
that's right. Thank you for not reading the part about running around the house.
no,
naked.
I didn't think.
I said later. I say, that Tom finally said, the house is so empty I could run around naked, and that's when my wife realized she was suffering from not empty enough syndrome.
Which may still happen.
Yeah, well, no, she's not here tonight. Your wife came. Tracy came. My wife's like, yeah, I've heard it all before. Whatever.
She goes along with this too, huh? She doesn't mind this letter.
She doesn't get any veto power. I always make her look good. I'm not stupid.
You do.
I rip the kids, I rip myself, and I say, Kelly's great. Everybody's happy.
Well, when Tom came here, he started at WGME, and then he went on to the Portland Pirates, and they won a Calder Cup championship the first year, and I was covering the team with Tom, and that was a great season. Met a lot of great people.
Yeah. I always tell a story. My oldest son, Jack, they won a championship, and I got a ring as the play-by-play guy, and my older son used to wear it all the time. And then in 2004, the Red Sox finally win, and I got a ring from that. And we're driving home from the ceremony, and at that point, Robbie's 4 and Jack's like 8. And I hear in the back seat Jack say, "You're going to love that Pirates ring." Really? And then he's the same kid who, in October 29th this year, texted me, "Now we each get 2 when you die." You could just pump the brakes on the you dying talk. That would be nice. I mean,
So you left Portland in '95, joined Nesson.
yes.
Front Row. You were the host of a show called Front Row.
Yeah.
And soon after you joined the Red Sox, and for the first couple of years, you were in the stands.
I was the first sideline reporter for the Red Sox. In fact, somebody at Major League Baseball told me I was the first sideline reporter for a local regional broadcast. Like, nobody had baseball sideline reporters because you had them in football because there were breaks, and hockey and basketball had intermissions. But baseball, there's no halftime. There's no real need. And so we did it mainly for the pre- and the post-game show. Right. And then it started when Jerry Remy started, sending me into the crowd live on the air. We were in Baltimore, and George Will, the late George Will, the great political columnist, was a season ticket holder for the Orioles. And he was sitting in his seats, and Jerry, on the air, says, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if TC could go get an interview with him?" I'm sitting behind Jerry. I used to sit behind them, watch the game. I'm like, really? So during the break, they're like, "Yep, see ya." So, I had to go down and try to get, and I did. I got the interview with him. So that became the thing. To the point where in August, Jerry's like, this is the old Yankee Stadium. And there were some kids with no shirts with Red Sox spelled on their chest. "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if TC went out and brought them hot dogs?" So I had to go buy 6 hot dogs, go into the bleachers at Yankee Stadium where fans are throwing beer at me. So, yeah. And then we interviewed fans. It became a thing, right? Not your typical fan was a thing we started doing. WEI did this whole spoof ripping me about how I was talking through every home run in Grand Slam.
It wasn't every home run, but...
No, but it felt like it sometimes, didn't it?
Gabe Kapler hit a game-winning home run.
Gabe Kapler hit a game-winning home run while I was interviewing a grandmother and her 3 grandchildren. Yeah. And nothing used to drive Orsillo nuts more than me going, "And there's a home run from Gabe Kapler. So you were saying..."
But in 2004,
yes,
Tom Werner says, "I want you to host the pre-
Yeah,
and
Sean
post-game."
McGrail, the president, Nesson, and Tom Warner, the owners, very involved. So
and you initially said, "Look, I really like what I'm doing," but they said, "No, try this." I mean, you had no travel anymore. You were home all the time. I mean, it certainly made it easier on you. Right. But it was a whole new spiel for you.
It was. Being in studio is very different because I really enjoyed being on the sidelines and you're at the ballpark and you're not with your 6 and 2-year-old son every night. And so there was a lot that I enjoyed. But the truth is, you actually miss your kids by the end of a baseball season. And 2003 was the Aaron Boone game. The walk-off home run in Game 7 at Yankee Stadium. And I was actually standing outside the Red Sox locker room, when the champagne came out of the Red Sox locker room, went down to the Yankees locker room. And that's every now and then, you've done this a long time. Every now and then the little fan in you comes back out. So I wasn't sure if I would enjoy the studio, but what did happen is like Dennis Eckersley and Jim Rice, and I mean all these guys that were great players and Hall of Famers that I got to watch, and they really took me under their sort of wing, and I learned the game in a different way watching it with them, and it's been an amazing run.
I want to read something that Tom Werner said. I went down on the last game of 2004 to do a profile on Tom. Spent the day with him, got there early, 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, followed him around. You can't believe what a superstar this guy is to the fans down there. Everywhere in the stands, people want to stop, shake his hand, take a selfie with him, take his photo. My wife's been at games before. She knows what it's like.
I did learn to get really good at selfies because they'd say, hey, can I take a picture? Yeah. And then they'd look for someone to take the picture and then hand them the camera. And the person would look at the camera and try to figure it out and then hold it up. And all right, yeah, thank you, bye. So I did get better at that. But you asked Tom Werner, and he said,
I asked
Tom who?
Tom Werner about what Tom does, and his what he said. It's not easy doing what he does. I've seen other people do it and flop. It comes very natural to him. He's got a winning combination of knowledge and warmth.
He said that?
He said that. It was in a story.
I forgot to read it.
Yeah. and
I would have used that in my contract negotiation.
And I spoke to Dennis Eckersley, and he said that Tom makes him feel comfortable because when they watch the game, they immediately start talking about what's going on and what they're going to talk about. And Tom just puts everyone at ease. Now, you deal with a lot of different guys. Eckersley, Steve Lyons, Jim Rice, Tim Wakefield, Lenny Donato. These are all guys with varying levels of talent and personality. And yet, you are smooth. It's very seamless with all of them. How do you
watch
that?
The show? I'm not always that smooth.
I see there are times when you're like, all right, come on, say something. Come on.
There was once, I won't name a name, but you probably figured out where it was after a really bad loss. It was late in the season. This was a long time ago. And I said something, and he was like, yep. I was like, all right, I got 59 more minutes to fill. I used to do Bruins games, and Cam Neely was actually an analyst with me for a couple of years before I don't know what he's doing now. He's like, president of the team or something. He's done all right. But he used to really have trouble getting his words out. And he actually said to me once on the air, he's like, Tom, help me. and it's a funny conversation, and I use this with our analysts all the time now. He said he would have so many thoughts that they would almost get log jammed. He's like, I want to say 6 different things about the game, and I can't get one of them out. And he said it to me, and I use it with a lot of our new analysts, and it was a great way to put it. He goes, I finally had to come to the realization that nobody's judging me on what I don't say. They're only judging me on what I say on TV, which sounds obvious, but you don't think about that. When you drive home at night sometimes, crap, I should have said this or this or this, and I didn't. And again, nobody knows what you didn't say. I mean, it sounds obvious, right? But really, what you say matters. And pitchers talk about throwing a pitch with conviction. As I tell these guys, it can be the biggest load of crap in the world. Just say it like you care. Just give me a little energy, give me a little passion, believe what you say, even if you change your mind later, whatever. In the moment, believe it.
But do you actually, when you find out you're working with a certain analyst on that night, do you have to say, okay, I gotta be more leading with him, or I let him talk a little more?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, a Dennis Eckersley show was completely different from a Jim Rice show.
Yeah, well,
I mean, in sheer tonnage of words, it's and that doesn't mean Jim can't make great points, but I gotta take Jim to what he knows best. And here's the thing, and it really took me a while to figure this out, as obvious as it's, a hitter sees the game completely different than a pitcher. You know what I mean? And there's no other sport like that. In football, everybody sees the same game. But we're talking about a great walk-off home run. In fact, Dennis Eckersley is credited for creating the term walk-off. Okay? He was the first one to call something a walk-off. But he wasn't talking about the home run. He was talking about him walking off the mound with his head down, and it was the worst thing in the world. And I'm not saying behind his back, I've said it to his face, because it's always all about Eck. All right? As long as you know that, we'll be fine. But so that's again, everybody walk off. He's like, yeah, now they walk off home run. Woo! They think it's a great thing. I hated it. I'm walking off. I let everybody down.
X words have hair.
Yeah, X words have hair.
And there's no question about that.
Jimmy Dunn's a comedian that actually met up here in Portland. I don't know if you ever heard of him or seen him, but he and some guys did this Eck app, where it's like 99 cents, and there's an Ectionary where you can look up, and you can Eck yourself, which is you take a picture and it got the mustache and the hair.
So we get back to that 2004 season, because that changed everything.
Yeah, changed everything. And where do you begin? You know what I mean? They trade Nomar, and nobody thinks that's a good idea. I remember Theo walking around for 2 weeks after that saying, boy, did I just screw up this entire franchise? I mean, that's as big a gamble as that was so close to the deadline. And some people now say it didn't make the deadline, but baseball let it happen, because again, back then you had to fax it in, and
right.
The thing would jam, and you don't trade anybody. But there were so many moving parts, because remember there were Minnesota was involved, the Angels was 4 teams, I believe the Cubs, and at one point I think it was Matt Merton was the minor leaguer. I might have gotten his name wrong, but I think that was the minor leaguer the Red Sox.
I think so.
Were sending 2 different teams thought they were getting him. That's how convoluted. The Cubs and the Twins both thought they were getting that player in the 4-team deal. So they throw this all together last minute, and that was a week after the Veritek punching A-Rod in the face game. So in a 1-week span, my oldest son went to the Jason Veritek camp, and they had a little ceremony at the end. He goes up, you shake his hand, and he's walking back, and it was just in a quiet moment in the gym, and he's like, I just shook the hand that punched A-Rod in the face. I was like, woo! Anyway, they were larger than life, right? You go to the playoffs, you're down 3-0. They lose game 3, 19-8. And we do the pregame show before game 4 out on what was then Yawkey Way. And I'm telling you, there's not a soul. The Patriots are playing a 4:00 game that day. I'll never forget this.
Yeah, they're playing the Redskins.
They're playing the Redskins. And there's nobody on the street. And everyone's in bars watching the Patriots game. We're like 20 minutes away from game 4 and nobody. Scalpers are selling it for half price. They're just, So everybody now believe, and I'll never forget. And again, you do this every day. I'd love to say that I'm just a fan, but sometimes it's a job. Yeah. And at this point, they've lost 3 straight games, so I'm already thinking about where I'm going on vacation next week. Right? That's, and Dave Roberts steals the base, and David Ortiz drives him in, and it's amazing. We look back on it now, and it's amazing. In that moment, I'll never forget Jerry Remy going, they're not going to win 4 in a row. Would you just get it over with? That's how we all felt.
Yeah.
You got to do this again tomorrow? To watch them lose then? But, they were the only ones who believed. And not until they won game 5, right, when it was 3-2, and extra innings again, and David Ortiz, a home run.
Yeah.
Was that the bloop?
That was a home run.
I think the home run was game 5. The bloop was game 4. And now it was going back to New York. And that was the first time you started to think, all right, well, now maybe there's pressure on the Yankees going back there and hearing it. And sure enough, there was.
And so you're in the studio when they win the World Series.
Yeah.
And you're trying to call your
yeah, in 1986, I had just graduated from college. And I was working in Plattsburgh, New York. And I was on an NBC station in the weekend anchor, which meant we had the Bill Buckner game, the Saturday night game. And I'm just a few months out of college.
Now, Tom's a Red Sox fan.
I'm a hardcore Red Sox fan. And I'm 21. I'm just out of college. And so I decide, so the game's going to end, they're going to do their little whatever, and then we are starting the newscast, and they have me coming on to lead the broadcast. Like, how they'll have the sports guy out right at the beginning if it's a big enough story. So I'm slated to begin the show. And I decide, before I run out there, I'm going to call my family, because they'll all be in Lewiston celebrating the Red Sox. If you remember, 3 different times, they were 1 strike away from winning the World Series. So where there's 2 strikes each time, I'm rotary phone, dialing my 1, 2, 0, 7, 7, 8, 4, 6, 1, 3, 9. I hope that's not somebody's number anymore. But that was my number. And so I waited for the 9. 2 strikes. 1, 2, 07. Third time, now I'm ready. Hang up. So I never call my family. They lose. I go in the air. I almost get fired because I'm pounding the desk going, "Hey, Red Sox!" And I'm in Plattsburgh, New York, by the way. So they're big win for the Mets. Yeah, no. This is not a big win for the Mets.
Tom
Yawkey's rolling in his grave. That's what I said at the beginning of the broadcast. And I got off the air, and my news director called me and said, "Get your bleep together or you're not going to be doing this." And I was like, okay. And so my family, I said, that was a running thing, right? When they win the World Series, I'll call you. 04, we're at Fenway, even though they won in St. Louis. The old Nesson studios were in the ballpark. We've moved out since. But so 9th inning, 2 outs, ground ball back to Folk. We're running at me and Remy, and I think it was Bob Tewksbury that night, are running out to the studio. And now I've got my flip phone, right? Now I'm all cool. And so I flip it, and I'll never forget this. I hit send to call my family before Folk had thrown it to Minkiewicz. And it's quick enough that in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my God, he's going to throw it away. They're going to give up 4 runs all because I hit this too soon. I actually had that thought. And so anyway, I call it, my mom and dad, and I think, my sisters and brothers were there, and it was it was great. We celebrate. We hung up, and then right as I hang up, my phone rings, and I flip it, and it was my wife with our son Jack. And I always say, Jack was 8, I was in my 40s, my dad was in his 80s, and it was the first World Series in all 3 of our lifetimes, which is, that's why that winter, church bells ringing, and now I can die in peace, and you don't have to, and stick around. We're going to win 3 more, stick around.
So they win 3 years later.
Yeah.
And then we come to 2013.
Yeah. Well, hang on. Can I just real quick?
Sure.
07 was a damn good team.
It was a great team.
It is the ultimate middle child of world championships. Well, 04 was magical. 13. Oh my God. 17. Whatever this year was. 18. What a run. But nobody ever remembers 07.
It was a good team.
Yeah, that's good. 13. No, 07 was a great team, and it was really the least drama of any.
Right.
They went out and won. They just were good.
They were very methodical. They were very businesslike.
Yeah.
There was no drama to it. There was no bloody sock. There was no Boston Marathon.
Well, exactly. They were just businesslike. Right. That J.D. Drew did his one thing in a Red Sox uniform, hit the grand slam.
Chad Finn loves him for that.
Right. We all love him for that.
We all love him for that.
That was it. Other than that, he was playing video games.
Yeah. But then we come to
I've never seen a guy less upset to not be playing. Hey, you're not in the live tonight.
Yeah, whatever. Am I getting paid? Am I getting...
But then 13 was, we were at Fenway on Marathon Monday. The show had just ended. The post-game show had just ended, and the team was getting ready to leave for Cleveland. And Tim Wakefield was my analyst, and he had just left. And all of a sudden, we heard, all these sirens and police cruisers and motorcycles were going off. Now, usually they give the Red Sox an escort through the city, so we thought they were leaving. But then, of course, we found out we were about a mile away from the finish line, and they were all going over there. And then, they kept us on the air for a little while afterwards, because kind of processing it in real time, not knowing what's going on. And I'll never forget that, that following Friday when we sheltered in place, and the search went all day until they finally found it in Watertown. And just that feeling that we, you didn't know what was going on. And that Saturday, I was on the field. We did a pregame show on the field, and that was when Ortiz, this is our bleeping city. And there's sometimes we overdo it in the media to talk about what a team means to a city, but I absolutely believe that the Red Sox helped Boston get back on their feet that week.
Yeah.
And you get back to normalcy and all that. But they did the 617 jersey. Will Middlebrook started that, and I also think that because of that, Boston made the 2013 Red Sox a better team than they were. Yeah. They were not the best team in baseball.
They had a lot of characters.
A lot of character and a lot of characters. Right. Shane Victorino and Johnny Gomes and
Mike Stanley,
David Ortiz, obviously, David Ross.
Yeah.
And David Ortiz, the grand slam in Game 2 against the Tigers, right? So
I'm covering Patriots game that afternoon.
Which was a great comeback in its own.
Against the Saints.
Against the Saints.
They score with 15 seconds left.
We're on the pregame show, and that happens, and there's a TV right behind us on Jersey Street, Yawkey Way then, and it's a big monitor, and they're supposed to watch us. Well, somebody changed it to Pat's game. So, like, there's a huge crowd behind us watching the show. This is so cool. Like, nobody's watching Pat's game. And you know, we're like in the middle, coming up next, and the crowd goes nuts behind us. And I'm like, Pats had just scored.
Pat scored. It was they were down, I think, 12 with a minute
like 3
and 10
minutes,
seconds
2,
left,
whatever,
something like that. So I'm leaving Gillette Stadium because I covered that game. And I get in the car and I'm driving up 120, and I call my son Alex, who's watching the game at home. And I said, well, maybe the Red Sox will have a comeback. He goes, I don't think so. So I'm driving, I'm listening to the game. And of course, the great call, you know, David, and my son, and my phone's ringing in my car, and my son's screaming into the phone about.
You know, we watched the game. So in the playoffs, we always do the post game show on the stage at the ballpark. Are there people up there? Should I be looking up? Hi, sorry, I haven't looked up. And I, you know, we go down in like the 8th inning, right? We go down in the 8th inning to do the show, right? You got to get down there and get ready. So I'm like, you know what? They're going to lose this game. They're probably going to get eliminated in Detroit. I'm going to go down and watch Ortiz last at bat at Fenway this year. So I stop, you know, I'm just with a fans, you know, they're kind of standing up on the rail where I always see you and Alex before the games. And kind of, you know, the middle walkway on the first base side. And, you know, you watch the pitching change and the bases loaded, and Ortiz hits a grand slam, and Officer Horgan puts his hands up. And, he had a bobblehead, too. That's like they're milking the greatest 5 seconds of your life. And he's a great guy. Steve's a great guy. But it's so funny because all these fans, you talk about fans recognize me or whatever, they're all like, TC, you knew, you came down and said, you know. I was down here to watch the last at bat at Fenway this year. They were going to get swept in Detroit. So that was special, and that was we got Kelly and the boys and I got to be on a duck boat that year for the first time, and we stopped in the trophy at the finish line. I'll never forget that. That was special.
And this year's team, 2000, I mean, spectacular. The most likable team that they've ever had.
Well, and you know, I mean, Boston sports radio, the previous couple of years, that had been the big rap, right? They're unlikable.
Right.
And you had the David Price thing with Eck a couple of years earlier, and you had, you know, so there was a residue, and they'd been eliminated in the first round. And Alex Cora, the whole story was Alex Cora. I mean, the greatest managerial hire ever. You know, he's exactly the guy they needed. They love him. He got them to buy into the system. Guys would take days off. You know, he would give guys days off so that they were rested. I mean, Brock Holt hits for the cycle.
He doesn't play.
In Game 3, and isn't in the lineup Game 4. And again, it's, you know, the kind of in-depth knowledge. I'm on the air post-game show. Steve Lyons is like, yeah, but look at the numbers tomorrow. I don't care. You hit for a cycle, you're in the lineup tomorrow. If I know one thing, Brock Holt's going to be in the lineup tomorrow night.
But it was,
if you're 3 for 10, you're still in the Hall of Fame. You know, so
that's right. Listen, Tom, I know there's going to be some people in the audience that are going to want to ask some questions. Molly, are you around? Microphone? All right. We need the microphone. I'm not sure where it is.
Well, you can ask the first one, and you can repeat it, Mike.
Yeah, I just want you were talking about Cora. I was disappointed that he wasn't the manager of the year. I wish to have a little understanding about the criteria for making that designation.
Let's see. He should have been manager of the year.
Well, you know, and Francona never got it with the Red Sox, and Joe Torre never got it with the Yankees. If you have talent, you don't get manager of the year. I mean, it really seems that simple, right? It's always who did the most with the least. And that's not what it's supposed to be, right? And it doesn't include the playoffs, so the voting is done as soon as the regular season's over. I think he definitely would have won if you included the playoffs. I'll tell you, I mean, it's amazing, and I've been reviewing the last couple weeks a lot of the World Series stuff. I mean, that 18-inning game, who stayed up for all of it? Me too. You know, the old days, and if anyone here knows my wife, the old days, if I rolled in at 5, she'd have been like, who are you out with? You know, because she went to bed. She's like, yeah, I gave up on it in like the 12th inning, you know, but she said she got up to pee in the middle of the night. I was like, sucks for him. You know.
When 12th inning was as far as I hit.
Yeah, see?
I had a
5 a.m. I got home at 5 a.m.
I had to cover Maine game the next day that started at noon, so I was getting up at
Stay
6.
up.
Yeah.
And that, to me, the most amazing thing is how Alex Cora was able to get that team to put that loss behind them in a matter of hours. I mean, he brought them all together. You all know the story by now, probably. He brought them all together after that game. He hates team meetings. He does not do team meetings, but he had a team meeting. He was like, they played their best, and it took 18 innings to beat you. You go home and fire it up. And, Evaldi, after 97 pitches in relief, his agent, I don't know if you ever saw that, yeah. His agent was in the crowd like this. Because he's going to be a free agent, and you're blowing out his arm. And every inning, Alex would say, "Are you done?" And I got one more inning. 8 times. And it was amazing because if you look, and I was watching the DVD again the other day, as soon as it's over, he goes his head down. He felt like he let the whole team down, and they lined up to grab him as he came off the field, and I think that spoke volumes.
And I think that's why everybody loved this team so much, because they all had each other's back.
Yeah.
Mookie Betts is not only the best player in the game, not named Mike Trout, maybe.
No, maybe including guys named Mike Trout.
But everybody loves him.
Yeah.
He's so likable.
He's quiet. He's humble.
And Benintendi and Jackie Bradley
They're
Jr.
good kids. They're good kids. I was saying to someone today, they were all raised well by their parents. And that's not always the case in a major league.
Now, before we go to the next question, you're leaving for spring training on the 12th, right?
Yes.
February 12th?
Day after the bean pot.
So what should we expect? I mean,
sun, 80s.
Yeah.
That's what I expect.
What's the storyline going to be down there?
It'll be interesting that, and Alex Cora, I was talking to him recently, and he said, TC, tell people I'm really sorry for the pitching they're going to see in spring training, because he's not going to use these guys much. Right. They all threw a lot in October last year, and they're going to really be careful at spring training. You're going to see a lot of number 97 facing the Yankees, while David Price is on field 3 throwing to the Salem Red Sox. They have to. You got to be careful with these guys now. And I think they were still a reliever short of being the team they should be. And I think they'll sign somebody before it's over. It's kind of a musical chairs game now, the way it works in baseball. J.D. Martinez didn't sign till almost March last year. They were playing games by the time he signed. And that worked out pretty well. So I think they'll land I think they will land a good reliever, but I think they're going to wait and try to get a guy whose price comes down.
Okay. So we're going to go to the audience now. Molly's here with the microphone. Please raise your hand. She'll come to you.
I played baseball in college, and one of the things I liked the most about practice was situations. Like there's runners on first and third, there's 2 outs or no outs, and they hit ground balls, and you figure out what to do. You watch the Red Sox in spring training. How much do they work on things like that?
It's a great question, and they actually do. I mean, it's about 10 days. Once the games start, it's amazing how quickly they fall into almost the regular season routine. But for those first 10, 11 days before the games begin, the workouts, that's kind of all it is. It's amazing. They have the day down to a minute. And they even do, one of my favorite drills I used to watch, and they have a funny name for it, I forget what it's called, but they have all the pitchers play every infield position. And they have guys on base. So that the pitchers are thinking more about what the infielders are doing during 2 men on, 1 out, and those type of things. And then they do it like for 3 hitters, then they all rotate. So it's really funny. My favorite was Henry Owens, like 6'7" lefty.
We know Henry very well.
When he was catching, it was great. 6'7" left-handed catcher. You'll never see that again. But so to answer your question, they really do early on a lot of positional stuff, a lot of situational stuff. But then when the games start, you replicate it a little bit during BP. They don't take infield anymore during the regular season. So once the flag drops.
Well, the more of those you can figure out ahead of time,
sure,
it really helps.
It's the beauty of baseball. I mean, more than any other sport, it's a thinking person's game. And it's all about having your head in the moment and knowing the situation. That's what I love about baseball.
Anyone else? Questions?
This is where you ask a thought-provoking follow-up while we wait for the next.
I have nothing.
Okay, next.
I'm enjoying this.
Just like we're on the bus again.
What's the future hold for Dustin Pedroia?
It's such a good question, and I don't know that Dustin Pedroia knows. When you hear him use words like, I'm hopeful I can come back at the beginning of the season, we don't know. It's a very unusual surgery for baseball. They do it pretty successfully in basketball, but the guys who do it in basketball come back and play 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 12 minutes, especially early on. You can't play 3 innings and take up a roster spot. So we'll see. I mean, I think he's just starting to run, which shows you how far behind he is. I would really doubt he'll be ready for the start of the season, but I think if anybody's going to come back from it, it's him. Nobody works harder, and that's been that's the good and bad of Dustin Pedroia. He only plays the game one way, so he's going to work his tail off to come back, but he's also going to be throwing himself at every ground ball that comes near him.
Kinsler signed elsewhere.
Yeah.
So who's at second base?
Well, Brock Holt can play there. That was his, shortstop and second base was his original position. Marco Hernandez was injured all of last year and would have been in the mix. I think he'll be in the mix. So I think they feel they've got some depth there, some guys who can play. You got Nunez, who you could move some things around, and you could put him there if you had to.
You can bring in Mookie Betts.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that again.
Molly?
I did that once. We all held our breath.
Yeah.
And Nunez, just keep him from falling.
Yeah.
I mean, that 18-inning game, they have nobody left, and he just can't stand up. He's over the catcher and then into the first baseman, and he looks up. You've probably seen the story, but he looks up at Alex Cora and he goes, "I can stay in. I can stay." Well, you have to stay in. We don't have anybody else. I mean, Chris Sale is going, "You want me to play short?" And it's like, no.
Over here, Tom. To your left.
Hi there. Not every player can drop a bunt, so
Very few can.
very few. And I understood that they work on that, in the minors, but not necessarily. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, it's the age of what we call sabermetrics in baseball, which is the advanced analytical analysis of the game, has really gotten to a point where very few teams want their players to bunt. They just don't believe that giving away the out. If you do the numbers will show you that you have more success scoring a run or runs in an inning if you have the player swing away rather than drop the bunt, because you're giving away an out, right? That's a sacrifice bunt. You're giving away an out to move the runner along. They will do it, and it's really sort of run expectancy, as they call it. It's what you expect to get against the other pitcher. So if you're facing an elite pitcher, you're facing Max Scherzer, and it's the 7th inning and it's 1-1, that's when they might drop a bunt to move the guy to second. But by and large, they're going to swing away. They're going to think, you got a guy on first with nobody else. They think 3 hacks at it is better than 2 hacks with a guy on second base. I don't know that I agree with it, but it's where the game is now.
I think we got someone back there.
Yeah, I want to go back to 2007. Is the Dustin Pedroia story true out in Coors Field regarding Jeff Francis?
Yeah, Jeff Francis.
That is true. That's not a myth.
Oh yeah, he couldn't. He didn't have his credential with him as they showed up at the ballpark, and he'd taken Jeff Francis deep. Jeff Francis, right?
Yeah. Pitcher, yeah.
I couldn't remember his first name. And they're walking in because Jerry Remy was there, so he told me the story before it went everywhere else, and they were walking in, and the security guard wouldn't let him in because Dustin Pedroia in street clothes does not look like an athlete, and at least back then. And so he said, where's your credential? He goes, listen, I'm the second baseman of the Boston Red Sox. The guy's like, he goes, you go get Jeff Francis. You ask him who Dustin Pedroia is. I'll tell you a better one, which isn't a Red Sox one, Celtics. Cedric Maxwell during the 2008 NBA Finals. Same thing happens. And again, he does look like a basketball player. 6'30" and towering over everybody. And he walks in, and this is the Garden, and the security guy wouldn't let him in. He grabs him, pulls him around the corner. See that retired number? That's my credential.
You mentioned Jerry Remy. How's he doing?
Jerry's doing great. Jerry will be back this year. He'll do a lot of home games. I talked to him this week. He just started 2 weeks ago. His latest, it's a sort of experimental treatment that they think, they got rid of it last fall, but it keeps coming back in the same spot. So they've got a new therapy that they think might work and keep it from him. But he's fired up. He's going to spring training. He's optimistic, and the Rem Dog will be back, which is great news.
Over here.
So what happened to Tim Neverett on the Red Sox radio broadcast, and who would you like to see replace him? Would Framingham Lou or?
Yeah. Well, Lou makes too much money in talk shows. He went to the Dodgers. I don't know if you saw that. I mean, there'd been a lot of talk that they might be going separate ways, but he was out there a lot during the World Series, obviously, and he got to talk to some people there, and they offered him a job because Charlie Steiner, who used to be on ESPN, is the Dodgers radio voice, and he's starting to scale back. And so they put together a TV and radio package for him. So I'm thrilled for Tim. It's a great opportunity to go out and do Dodger games. He'd wanted to do some TV for a while and didn't have the opportunity here. So that's been great. I have no idea about the radio call, who they're going to bring in. I know it's a great job, and a lot of people have talked to them about it. I've heard some rumors that they might have a few people do it this year because there's not a lot of time left, but I don't know if that's true. And I assume, the reason I bring that up is if they do that, I'm assuming Lou would be part of that rotation. They had him up there a lot. They had him in the World Series, and he's great. I mean, he did a year with me in studio before he went over to the dark side on the NBC Sports Boston. And he's great. He's a great baseball mind, a good guy, and a local guy who made it to the Red Sox, which is great.
Get someone here on the right here, Tom.
This goes back to something you talked about before, but one of the most moving things about last season was after the last game of the World Series, at the press conference, a journalist asked David Price, or said to David Price, the other players say you're a great teammate. What does it mean to you to be such a great teammate? And he broke down into tears.
Emotional.
So I guess I'm wondering about that. You said something about it in terms of Alex Cora. Who were the other players that contributed, or what else can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's a great question about Price because, he was considered a pretty good teammate everywhere else. And then he got here and, he had the dust up with Dennis Eckersley, and that was a publicized thing, and he picked the wrong guy to pick a fight with because everybody loves Eck. And so, that wasn't a good look for him. And then he kind of got cantankerous, and the injuries, I think. I always say it's hard to judge a player by how he's reacting during an injury time because they don't know what they're doing. I mean, I've talked to so many injured players over the years, and they're just, you're taking away the one thing they love to do, which is play the game. And now they can't. And they don't know how long it's going to be, and his was an elbow, and potentially looking at a year. So I think Alex Cora was a huge part of the reason why David was able to sort of turn around and rebuild that bridge a little bit with his. I think he's fine with his teammates, but with the fans, and to get the most out of him. He was great in the playoffs. When he finally won a playoff game, it was the monkey off his back, and so I think Cora's really good at that. I think Cora's really good at taking the pressure off them. I think he's really good at keeping them rested. I mean, I remember during the season, again, brilliant analysis by me in the studio. How many times early in the season, he's resting half the team. They're going to sacrifice a lot of wins this year by doing. They win 108 games, record number of wins for the franchise. But so they bought into it. He would give guys days off, even if you were like, my God, they really need that guy in the lineup today. But he always had the view of the big picture. And I'll tell you a quick one. After that 18-inning game, the stupidest little thing he said in that team meeting was no batting practice tomorrow, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's the World Series. You have batting practice in the World Series. It's what you do. And during the regular season, if you ever had an 18-inning game or a really late night, you'd be like, no batting practice tomorrow, sleep in, come in late. And that's what he told the guys, sleep in, come in late. They're like, the World Series game? And several players, Steve Pierce told me a few weeks ago, he said, as soon as you heard that, you're like, wait a minute now, he's treating this like a regular season game. And in the regular season, you lose in 18 innings, who cares? You come back tomorrow. I mean, you care, but by the time, baseball players are not like, I came from hockey where, 3 days later, Kevin Kaminsky's still bashing his head against the wall over a loss, Baseball is every night.
And someone else's head, too.
Yeah, maybe mine. Every night. So baseball players, at the beginning, I was just like, they don't care. How do they know? You know, but they really, they don't leave the clubhouse until they've put the loss behind them. And when they leave the clubhouse, it's behind them. They're on to tomorrow, to paraphrase Bill Belichick. And so by doing that in the World Series, they were like, okay, so we'll just put this 18. And they all told me, they got to the ballpark the next day, and the Dodgers were all taking batting practice. They're like, you know. But that was a big moment to win the team back over.
I want to ask you, and Molly's got one more question over here, but on all the years you've been doing it, do you have a favorite player?
Ooh. You know, Mookie has certainly moved right at the top of that list. I mean, I've never dealt with a more humble, more self-effacing superstar. I said Johnny Damon forever. Yeah. Johnny Damon was always my answer to that. I got to know him really well, and you know, he played through everything. And I really think of all those self-proclaimed idiots from '04, and that was their term, that he was the one who kind of changed the culture. You know, there's a story where they were all, he got, after a game, they were going over to a club on Lansdowne Street, and he saw a couple of guys, and they were waiting in line. He's like, you guys are waiting in line? Yeah. We're the Boston Red Sox. We don't wait in line. And I grabbed them and went to the front, and they let him in. And I don't remember who the other two guys were, but they're like, you know. Like, yeah. And so Johnny kind of came in and kind of really did change them. You know, Boston can crush teams, and it has for a long time. And I think Johnny was one of the guys, more than a lot of the other big personalities on that team. He was the guy who kind of got them to say, you know, we're Boston, you know, we're the Red Sox.
It's funny because he came from a small market.
Well, yeah, Kansas City and Oakland. But remember, Kansas City, he was like the phenom his first couple of years. And they went out, and then he ran into Damian Jackson in '03, and then he looked like caveman and came back with the long hair. But Mookie, I'll tell you a quick Mookie Betts story, everything you need to know. So he comes up, remember the rookie year, he didn't win Rookie of the Year because he was up and down. I don't think he qualified. And he was a second baseman, projected to hit 15, 20 home runs, right? And now he's the best right fielder in baseball who can hit 40. And he had that great rookie year, and he comes back the second year, and he's wearing number 50, right? Mm-hmm. And the equipment managers, you know, Mookie, you know, we got some nice numbers here. Number 19, number 17. You don't have to wear number 50 anymore. Mookie says, yeah, but think of all the kids who bought a number 50 jersey.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, it's like, I don't want to.
My son was one of them, so he's
I'll tell him you said
we're
thanks.
happy for that.
Yeah. But I mean, who does that, right? Everybody changes to a lower number. That's a rite of passage. When you become a regular player, you get a lower number. But he literally didn't do it because he didn't want kids to have an outdated jersey. And the Red Sox like, but they would have bought another one.
We have one last question over here.
Well, first time I feel comfortable speaking for everybody else here, saying that we appreciate and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
And know that you work with a real eclectic band of guys like, you know, Jimmy and Psycho and Lenny. But has Eck ever said anything in a post-game or a pre-game that just made you stop and say...
Yeah, so here's a couple, okay? You got time for a couple quick 10 seconds of stories?
Yeah, I guess we can go over, right?
We okay for a couple minutes? One of my favorites, and I still haven't told Lenny this story. So in 2004, Lenny DiNardo was a Rule 5 player. You know what that is? You get picked up off another team's roster because you're in the minors for a certain amount of time and you haven't been called up. But the caveat is the team claiming the player on Rule 5 has to keep him on the Major League roster the whole season. If you want to send him down, then he goes back to the original team. So it's like being on scholarship. And they get Lenny DiNardo on the Rule 5. And it's 2004. I mean, it's a larger-than-life team. And here's Lenny DiNardo straight up from AA. And so Lenny pitches a game. And we come on the air after. And X breaking down DiNardo's performance. And now he's going. And he's like, he didn't do this, and he didn't do this, and he didn't do this. And at the end he says, you know, he might have a nice career, but I don't see it. And then we go to break. And he says, I wasn't too tough on the kid, was I? No, he said he won't have a career. Other than that. And, well, I didn't mean to come down on the guy, but I don't see it. It's like, yeah, you said that. We all know. John Halama was a lefty we had. And again, Cheese, real quickly, Cheese is a fastball. Gas is exceptional fastball. Gas Masterson is a guy who has mastered the exceptional fastball. I go forever. I just, branch work. My favorite is branch work. That means you're clinging to the branches and they're cracking and the end is coming. So like at the end, at the end of a career, it's branch work. Okay. The guy's not good enough to be there, but he's holding on and it's branch work. But if you're right, if you throw gas, you'll get iron, and
Got hair.
So hair, but Cheese is a good major league fastball, and John Halama is a lefty, kind of a soft throwing lefty on the Red Sox. I don't know what year this is, 02, somewhere in there,
early,
05, I don't know, 05. So he says, and again, John Halama's on the Red Sox, and we're doing some out of town highlight. And it's a random guy. And he's like, oh, this guy's awful. He's got like John Halama cheese. And the Red Sox have us on in the clubhouse. My favorite, when they, I don't know. This doesn't leave the room, okay?
This is going viral tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'm telling you now.
So a manager who I won't name, there haven't been that many Red Sox managers, but a manager, so these are my favorite moments when we get like the call, you get like the PR director will come over, hey, TC, manager X wants to see you in the office. It's like going to the principal's office, right? And it's never me, so I'm just laughing, I'm along for the ride. So we're walking over, and the whole way over, X saying, listen, I don't care, man. I don't want to be their buddies. I don't want to be his buddy. I'm not here to be his buddy. I'm doing my job. He's vented. He's all, I don't want. We sit down, and the first word out of the manager's words are, Eck, I thought we were buddies. And I burst out laughing. And they both just look at me. Never mind.
Well, listen.
But that happens more than you think. I mean, where a player calls you over. I mean, I know we're in overtime now, but David Ortiz in 2009 was having a horrible start, and Mike Lowe was still hanging around, and he wasn't playing. And so we had a poll. We used to do online. We stopped after this. We used to do like an online, whatever it is, a viewer poll, and it was it had nothing about David Ortiz. It said, what should they do with Mike Lowe? And of course, the overwhelming winner was he should be the everyday DH. Now, you could infer that that's saying David Ortiz shouldn't be. And they won in a walk-off, and when they win, it's on in the clubhouse. And the inning where they won began with David Ortiz hitting into a double play. And I convinced the producer, no, you should show the double play to start, because that's part of the inning. So, of course, the Red Sox win, and it was Jeremy Hermida hit a walk-off base hit off the wall. And they all go in the clubhouse, and the first thing they see is us showing Ortiz hitting into the double play. And here's tonight's viewer poll. What should Mike Lowell do? He should be the everyday DH. I show up at the ballpark the next day, and it's the only time Tom Warner's waiting for me. Got a minute? A half hour later, we're still sitting in the stands at Fenway, and then he goes, at the end, he was just like, just make sure, and I always do this anyway, but he goes, make sure, talk to David, and you got to be in the clubhouse. You got to go in there. I literally will walk through the clubhouse someday just to, look, I'm all here. Anybody beef? Got beef? Okay, bye. And so I went over and talked to David, and it was as intense a conversation as I've ever seen. And he was in my face. He goes, you know what I've done for this team? You know what I've done for this city? And you just take it. You know what I mean? But anyway, that was a detour from the Dennis Eckersley. But yeah, almost on a daily basis, he says something that, he also swore on the air once, which was funny because it was Kevin Youkilis, and he fouled one off his foot, and it was the S word, and you could clearly read his lips. And they show it like 3 times. And by the third time, this is when X do in the game. And the third time, he's like, there he is saying, oh, bleep. But he says the word. And I was in the booth, and we're all just like, that's what he said? Like, yeah. You didn't have to say it. But I think that's why, I truly believe, by the way, that Dennis Eckersley is the best studio analyst in the country. And I absolutely believe that. And it's because he's that rare combination of a Hall of Famer who has great passion for the game and pays attention to it. Like, he texts me, 1 a.m. You watching the Seattle game? No. Why the hell are you? But you've been around a lot of players. There's very few who.
I'm usually watching the Seattle game.
Yeah, well, maybe I should. I'd be better if I did that. So anyway, he's great, and Jerry's like that. Jerry's so passionate about the game, and he pays attention. So we're really lucky that we have great analysts. We really do.
Yep.
And some have gone on to great things. Gary DiSarcina has gone on to be a coach. He was with me for a while, and Ken Maka went to manage the Milwaukee Brewers. I tell Eck all the time, stick with me. You'll do something with your life.
Well, listen, we could be here for all night. And I'm sure you
done?
guys would stay, but, what?
There you go. Yeah.
More beer.
We're going to take it to the old port.
I haven't seen any, so. But listen, Tom, I appreciate you coming. And,
thanks, Mike.
And
hey, by the way, again, 3 times Maine State Sports Writer of the Year. That's impressive. Seriously. Proud of you.
3-time New England Emmy Award winner.
This would sound really crass, except it's 5, but that's fine.
All right.
That's fine. I'm sure it was an old press release you read. It's fine.
Well, listen, I hope you all enjoyed this as much as we did,
Thank you. No, listen, if I could just really say, you guys are the best, and I love coming back to Maine. The Sea Dogs just extended their deal with the Red Sox. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
I like to think it's because of the bobblehead, but I mean, seriously, I love Maine. You said at the beginning, and it's absolutely, there's no better state in the world, and there's we had this debate the other day at Nesson, and it was ranked the New England states, and we literally had a vote. There were like 20 of us in the conversation by the end, and they threw out my ballot because it said 1 Maine, 6 the other 5, and that's how I feel. So thank you for coming tonight. It was really fun.